Alright, y'all, welcome back to HOA. I have removed my noise gate, so hopefully you won't have the cutting out all the time like we had before. And then I also have learned to mute my mic on my little VOD review setup here, so that hopefully I won't be clearing my throat in your ears. I will probably at some point re-record the missed one with better audio, but that might not be until next season because I can also just re-record all of them with the new affix. That said, let's go ahead and get started with HOA. HOA is a relatively fast one, but it's also a relatively tight timer. I believe that I recorded this footage on, it was definitely a fortified week. Fortified, volcanic, spiteful, I think. And this tank typically pulls it a little bit different than most pug tanks I've seen. So I'll explain a little bit about like how this varies from what I typically see. Either way, HOA is one that, depending on the week, you might have a lot of variability in this first little courtyard area, especially because like the shards of Halkias, for example, which we'll talk about here in a minute, are just a non-issue on tyrannical weeks, but they can actually really be quite difficult on certain fortified weeks, depending on your group, particularly if you have a lot of melee, versus, for example, the first boss, Halkias, if he's never really that hard, but obviously he takes a lot of time on tyrannical weeks, so essentially dealing with like prideful timings and stuff is something that you can really play around with in this courtyard area. So that's why you might see different routes each week in HOA. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about this route and everything else as we go. Probably should have done that intro while we're sitting here waiting to put the key in. How's everyone's day going? Alright, so the first and most important thing you can do to screw up HOA happens before the key starts. No, I'm just kidding. You won't actually screw it up, but it is a minor thing. So you'll notice that as this dungeon starts, literally no one moves until this yellow shield comes down. Once that key goes in, just take your hands off your keyboard and mouse and just hang out until the shield drops. The reason is it keeps mobs from coming up, and I'll show you what that is once they actually start running up. So no one's moving, and then now we can start moving. So you'll see these two mobs off here in the distance. As soon as someone starts moving forward, they will start running towards us, and that'll happen even before the shield goes down. So you want to make sure that no one moves, because just the way that this timing is going to work out, it's a little bit easier for the tank to pick them up if they haven't moved until you move. That said, it's not actually going to kill the key, so don't worry about it. This pull is almost always, anyone who's paying attention should lust on this pull. Now, sometimes, depending on the week and the tank and stuff, that you will pull either just these dark blades and this hunter, or you might pull these two as well. And I've even seen pulls involving these side guys at various times. Bottom line is this will probably be a relatively large pull. That's intentional because with all of the trash you have to kill in this whole courtyard area, you're definitely going to have at least 10 minutes between now and when you fight either of the next two bosses. And so you want to use heroism just because, hey, why not? It has value. Let's get some value out of it. So people will do a decently large pull here if they can manage it, and hero. Even if your tank only does a small pull with these two and a hunter, still probably hero. There's really not any. If you wait until a better value, such as maybe the prideful or the shard, you might not have enough time for it to come off of cooldown. So just use it on the first pull. Virtually everyone does, and you should. So we'll get it all pulled in, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the pull. Now, as it's pulling, these dark blades, this one that's kind of in this awesome action shot here, they will do a deadly thrust. It is a frontal attack, a frontal melee attack aimed at your tank, but it will hit anyone who's in front of them when it goes off. So, and of course, as you can see, the tank's running around trying to pick up all of these mobs. So melee in particular, but even ranged, as they're running in, trying to make sure the tank stays healthy if you're a healer, or trying to help them round stuff up. It is very likely that if you're not paying attention, you get hit by one of these thrusts, and as the name suggests, they are quite deadly. So keep an eye on what that dark blade is doing. I was a little bit worried about tank threat here, because the mage, obviously everyone, they know this is a big pull, they know heroism's coming, they're gonna go in pretty hot, so you want to have your misdirects, you want to have your tricks, and then I also just ringed things to keep us a little bit safe. So let's talk about also just a little tip for tanks and people who are going to assist their tanks in a helpful manner. This pull right here, Obliterators are casters, Dark Blades are not. So if you're a prop paladin, you should throw your shield at the Obliterator, not the Dark Blade, because you want the silence to be on the caster. Or pull them with a, something else and then hold the shield for after it actually starts casting. And basically I say this because if the tank doesn't do that and the Obliterator starts casting, and even if the tank does do that, if it takes a while to get in with the group, it can really be helpful for everyone if a ranged interrupt is watching that Obliterator and kicks it so that it joins the rest of the group. So, Obliterators. Well, since we're already talking about that, let's talk about what they do. The main thing, other than just casting some sort of racking pain or something, I don't know. They cast some sort of little, hey, I'm a caster, I'm gonna do damage to you, haha, take that. But the other thing that they do is called Curse of Isolation, I think, some sort of curse, and it targets anyone. It can target. I've never seen it target a tank, I should say, but I don't think I have, anyways. But it can definitely target DPS and healers, and anyone. And so it basically ticks down for I think around 8 seconds, and then it's going to explode, doing damage to the person who has it as well as anyone who's in the circle around them. So everyone needs to understand that this is a curse, so you need to look around at your group. When you start the key, look at how many decurses you have. Druids can decurse, mages can decurse, shamans can decurse. I'm sure other people can decurse, but I can't think of any right now. So, because those are the ones that I play that can decurse. So, keep that in mind. Also, if you are a Kyrian, your vial, if you get it, can cleanse it off of you. And the reason I listed those off is because if you don't have any decurses in your group, you need to interrupt that curse, especially on Fortified Week, and especially if there's 2 Obliterators in the pull, because they can both go on the same person and instantly kill them on a Fortified Week if they get both of them on the same person. So if there is a decurse in your group, theoretically, it's not as high of a priority of an interrupt. However, that relies on the person who has the decurse actually using their decurse button. In pugs, unfortunately, you cannot often rely on your mages and your boomkins and your DPS shamans cleansing. A lot, I'm not going to say they never do. I've seen some excellent ones. There's some great players out there, but it is pretty common for them to not even have it on their bars or not realize that curses have gone out. So just don't rely on that. Interrupt them when you can, but and if you have a decurse button yourself, consider helping your healer out with that, especially if they can't do it themselves. If they're a paladin or a monk or a priest, they can't cleanse those curses. So help them out. Otherwise, they just have to heal through it, and it can, especially on Fortified Weeks, take a lot out of them. So that's really all there is to worry about the Obliterator. Dark Blade, I've already mentioned, that's really just the thrust and, smacking your tank. Just the deadly thrust to look out for, which is that frontal hit. The other humanoid mob we have over here on the right is the Huntsman of some sort. I forget exactly what it's called. Let's get its name here. I don't even know. It's going to constantly just aim. Okay, so it's the Hound Master. So this Hound Master, it just shoots people at random. On Fortified Keys, it's nice to know who it's targeting, so this one's about to shoot me. That's really good in case someone's about to get this, because it'll just do that at random. That's not the tank's fault that it's hitting the DPS. So knowing that someone's about to get shot is a pretty good thing to know as a healer, but not the biggest of deals. That said, it can do a sort of disengage sort of animation. It'll jump around, land near someone, and start doing rapid fire. Rapid fire is a frontal cone that can be, like all frontal cones, it just does damage to things in a frontal cone in front of it. And I tell you this because you can interrupt that with like a stun or an incapacitate, or I believe also a push, like a boop, like a typhoon or a ring or something of that nature. That is a very good thing to stop if you can. That said, it is entirely possible to just move out of it. It's not unavoidable damage. If your group's good enough to avoid it, then do that, because you don't want it stun locked. because what's much more important that they do is Loyal Beasts. They will occasionally cast something called Loyal Beasts if there's Gargans up. And if that cast goes off, and it can be stunned and incapped and pushed, but it can't be kicked. But if that cast goes off, any Gargans nearby will enrage, and they will do a lot of damage. These are already very dangerous mobs, the Gargans, so you want to make sure that the Hound Master is not able to get a Loyal Beast off. If it does get one off, note that Druids, Rogues, and Hunters can de-enrage the Gargans, but they have to do it one at a time, which is unfortunate, so it's better to just not have it go off at all. The reason Gargans are so dangerous is not only do they just generally do a lot of damage to the tank, but they also are stacking a bleed. Now, if you're like most tanks and are Kyrian, you can wipe bleed stacks with your Kyrian Vial. Paladins can bubble them off, and if not, you just have to kind of kite it out. You have to keep an eye on your bleed stacks, especially on Fortified Week. Don't let them get too high. It really can chunk you, and if you have, high bleed stacks, and you're like, oh, it's okay, I can handle this, I'm doing fine, and then a Loyal Beast goes off and enrages that Gargan, you're screwed. So keep an eye on that. I wouldn't let your stacks get on Fortified Week. I would probably try and drop around 5, if not sooner. But on non-fortified weeks, I've easily healed tanks through 9 and more. And that's basically everything in this fight. So we're gonna pop Heroism and start doing the DPS. So here's the rapid fire. You can see it's just firing off, but it's firing into the group, and that's not great. So I stunned everything. There's no reason to not just stun to your heart's content. When the Wicked Bolt, that's the thing that the Obliterators just randomly cast, and you can see that that a Loyal Beast went off, so our Gargans are very large, so the tank immediately runs out. Well, we had a Shadow Fury go out. If I don't have a boop, unfortunately, to help, but we got some blizzards going out. We want to make sure that because these things are fortified and enraged, that we were helping our tank kite. So Spitefuls are just ignored. If it's Spiteful Week, just let them die let them kill themselves over time for the most part, and we'll move forward. Now, one of the special things about this dungeon is the Stoneborns here. The Stoneborn are the gargoyles that Venthyr players can mind control in here. It is a very big value for your group. However you want to use it, you want to use it wisely. A lot of people will just, oh, there's a Stoneborn, let me go mind control it, without actually thinking about how to use it best. This one is, depending on how your group is doing and if you're melee heavy or not, it's usually popped for Prideful, and then you can usually still have, depending on how fast you kill the Pride, you might have it up still for the Shard of Halkias. But because you don't want to pop that Stoneborn too soon, you'll instead come around here to the left and pull this Obliterator and Darkblade, which are basically the same as what you have already been fighting. Let's see here. Let's go a little bit faster. There's going to be a lot of the same but in slightly different numbers here. Playback, speed, faster. The little groundskeepers kind of patrol around, so he joined in here. He just smacks the tank. I think that if the tank isn't in range, he'll smack the closest person to him, so keep that in mind if you're ending up having to kite for some reason. This is just another Hunter and the Gargans, same as before, just don't let Loyal Beast go off. It's rapid firing into a direction that doesn't matter, so we just let it go. I would like to play this a little bit faster. I would like to at least be playing it at all. There we go. Let's see here. Okay, so don't want to go too fast, otherwise you won't be able to see what's going on. So, what the heck is going on? I am a popular person tonight. Okay. Do not disturb it is. Okay, so these are 2 Obliterators, so that you can see Curse of Obliteration. That's what it's called, going out right now. If this doesn't get interrupted, then this could theoretically go on the same person. And luckily, the mage we have here is really good with the decurses, so I'm not too worried about if that does happen. However, that's only one decurse. So if they go on different targets, which you can see they are going on different targets, we've got one going on Therazin and one going on Mia, then Izzy will cleanse one, and the other one might end up taking the damage depending on how fast he is. So looks like we got maybe one interrupted and one decursed, or Izzy decursed one and Therazin took the other one because we only have one decurse. So that's why you want to keep in mind how many decurses you have, and use that to determine whether or not you need to be interrupting Curse of Obliteration. Now, theoretically, Therazin, who's back here and is our Venthyr, is going to go get us a Gargoyle, but he might be waiting for the Shard. I do typically like it for the Shards on Fortified Week. The Thrash can be very painful. Granted, we have a very heavy ranged comp, which will make sense why that matters here in a moment, once I explain the Shard. So Therazin's going to go get us, he's out of range because he's going to get us the Gargoyle. Now the Collector will do something called like Collect Sins, or Sin Collection or something like that, and basically while that's going off, he's summoning ads. So you want to make sure that gets interrupted. It's the only thing really to interrupt with like a standard kick in this fight, so just kick it. There's nothing else to save your kicks for. The Shard, on the other hand, will alternate between two attacks, one of which is apparently smacking the healer. No, but really. So here's the Thrash. This is the one he starts with. This is a pulsing AoE damage on the group. However, it can be outranged. However, you have to stand at virtually max range for your ranged classes. So, like, if you are a ranged class, get until you can just barely hit him and hang out there. Don't, like, be in mid-range because you're going to take needless damage. Unfortunately, since I'm playing the monk, we can't see it right now. I think I might do a ranged heal on the next one. Oh, and some sort of, is it? Yeah, the Siphon Life magic debuff that I have right now needs to be cleansed. It's a magic effect, so just, it can go on any DPS or healer, so just cleanse it. It looks like a little red swirly that comes from the Collector. It can't be kicked, but it can be stunned. So after the Thrash, he'll then do a Sin Quake, which he's about to do. So what happens when he does a Sin Quake is after the cast goes off, swirls will appear under where everyone is standing, and after a second or two, damage goes out. So there's the swirl, and everyone just moves. So once that starts going out, just move. He's already, when DBM or whatever you're using first tells you, hey, it's Sinquake time. Like when that alert first goes off, that's when he's picked your location. So you can move at that point and you won't have to move again. So you can move just immediately and you'll be just fine. Now because this Shade didn't get killed, I can't mount. That's one of the reasons you might want to kill Shades, is to quickly mount. But we've even got the Pride speed buff, so whatever. I don't mind running with my tiny little gnome legs. Okay. This pull is very often combined. Keep in mind, though, we've got 2 Obliterators. So again, we have to worry about the... Actually, yes. Do we have 2 Obliterators or 3? We have 3 Obliterators. So we really have to be on top of either our AoE stuns, our interrupts, or our decurses. And honestly, it's probably going to be a combo of the 3, because there's 3 that are going to be not synced here. In the meantime, especially for you melee who are watching for kicks, you have to keep an eye on where this Dark Blade is, because he's going to be dark thrusting. But so we got Curses of Obliteration going out. Unfortunately, I can't cleanse them, but Izzy's on top of things. Okay, so Therazin got 1 curse. He takes a... Did you see how much damage he took from that? He took like half of his health bar from 1 curse going off. So you can see that if he got both curses somehow, he would just be insta-dead if he didn't get a cleanse. More shards, more collect sins, more cleansing of the Siphon Life. The other thing to consider is when you're fighting, you know, these sin collectors which cast that Siphon Life, that magic debuff that needs to be cleansed. If you do have a healer that can cleanse curses, that's also their magic cleanse. So if they are wasting time, if they're I shouldn't say waste, it still has value, but if they're spending their dispel cooldown on a curse, might not have it up for that magic when that magic hurts a lot, and I think it heals the mobs too based on the amount of damage it does or something of that nature. So they need to have their cleanse available for that. So it's much better to kick because you can't kick Siphon Life. You can stun it, but you can't kick it. You can kick the curse. So kick the curses, y'all. Is kind of the net result of what I'm saying here. Quake. So we've already moved. You can see our ranged out here at trying to maintain maximum range. It's particularly annoying to try to maintain max range because the tank also has to move for Quake. So basically after every Quake, the range have to refigure out what max range is. But I believe in y'all. Melee during Thrash, of course we understand, we healers understand you can't avoid the damage during Thrash, but you can help us out by rogues, you can feint it. Paladin's good time for Shield of Vengeance, Monk's good time for Touch of Karma, anyone else just good time to use your general defensives. If I recall correctly, and it's been a long time since I recorded this run, several weeks, but if I recall correctly, we do a kind of wonky pull downstairs after this, so we'll see. I feel like it went pretty south. We didn't full wipe, but we almost did, if I recall correctly. We'll find out. That might have been a different run. Okay, never mind. It must have been a different run. So we just got more Hound Master here. Some routes will pull these Groundkeepers here. Depending on the week, it might be pulled with the casters in front of the shard, might be pulled with the shard, or might be pulled after the shard, just for where people want percents and prideful timing. As you can see, we did not do so. We are going to get pride off of this. Now, prideful and spiteful is an interesting combo because a lot, obviously the prideful might spawn near where the spitefuls are also spawning. So I like to drop a ring and try to protect the melee from spitefuls. But whether or not that actually gets used well by the group is always a little bit iffy. The downside of running a full ranged group is that I don't get really good value out of my Bone Dust Brew. Sad day. Okay, so this was a good use of this pride. So this big pack, you can see we've got basically every mob type. We've got a Hound Master, Dark Blades, Obliterators, and Gargans. So this is arguably one of the roughest pulls in this dungeon. So this is a good use for the prideful to take it in here. You can see that there's a Stoneborn here. This is not a bad use for this Stoneborn, especially on the fortified week like this one, to just use it on this pull. And while we're talking about Stoneborn, let's wait until my camera has rotated so we can see the Stoneborn I just pointed out. There's also another Stoneborn over here, down here in the back by this shard, and then there is a Stoneborn up here on the mountain, which we will pull later, I think, because like I said, this is kind of a weird route. And then there's a Stoneborn behind us. So we got this gargoyle, a little bit late in the pull, but still good value. And then, okay, so there's that other Stoneborn that I mentioned, which can be pulled into the boss, and I'm pretty sure I end up doing that. We'll find out. And just as usual, more Obliterators. This Stoneborn, unless you're going to do something crazy like have multiple Stoneborns on the boss on Fortified Week, which would be a little bit weird, it's usually going to be used to facilitate a relatively large pull here or the shard. I believe that we do a shard. This is another place where this particular tank's pull strategy is a little bit different from the average pug. So what you're about to see is not typical. I mean, the pulling this Hound Master is pretty typical, but what comes after will be a fun surprise for us all. I wanted to boop that thing closer to us because if we had to get in close to DPS it, someone might have accidentally pulled the Stoneborn before we wanted it, so that's why I booped that, even though I didn't have much to do. So we got a stun on that Loyal Beast. Rapid fire, we make sure we know where it's going and we move out of it. And now here comes the weird stuff. This tank, unless he goes for the gate mobs, no. So what this tank likes to do, which is not very commonly seen, is he likes to go, you can see him off here in the distance by himself. What he typically likes to do is he goes and pulls this shard and he brings it to us in the courtyard. This is not something that you should typically expect in an HOA. Most groups will go in. I understand why he does this, because a lot of people, if you try to thread this needle, there's always lots of face pulling and stuff that people do. So I understand where this comes from, but it's just not common. So just keep that in mind, that this isn't something you will regularly see. And it's just the same old Sin Collector and Shard. We've got, except this time we've got a Gargoyle, which is exciting. Also, even though it's not in this route, I do want to talk about this pull right here that I'm pointing out in the distance. Some people, after the shard that we already fought, will jump down here and fight these mobs, like right as they jump down. This is incredibly dangerous for a few reasons, and it does depend on the week. First off, this is just a relatively difficult pull. It's got some Gargants and some Huntsman, and then also normally there's the Pat here that you might end up accidentally getting. And you're very likely to accidentally get it because a lot of people won't dispel their or desummon their pets before jumping down. Their pets will then come around here around the side and often will face pull more stuff into an already difficult pull. Additionally, because you've got the Pat here, the Groundskeepers here, and the wall here, there is no place to kite to drop stacks on the bleed. And it's even worse if the Loyal Beast goes off, and you're highly likely to have people standing in the rapid fire. And on this particular week, Spitefuls, you have no place to run for the Spitefuls when they spawn. So that's why we didn't do this pull. I'm not going to say this pull is never doable, especially on like tyrannical weeks without any particular roughness. You could definitely do this and intentionally get the Pat and things like that, especially if you come into it with pride. So it's not a never ever do this pull type of pull, but it is one that has its own unique dangers because of its placement that you would want to be aware of if your tank decides to jump down like that. It has typically fallen out of style though, for tanks to pull that. Once we kill this shard, we will get prideful again. Now, near the end of the prideful, and I almost get, someone almost dies because I'm off doing this, I'm going to go and get the other gargoyle that's really far away. Because if you don't get it and use it on the boss, it's just wasted. It's a resource you could have used but didn't. So it's better to have someone go pull that and use it. Of course, and I'm communicating to my group on Discord, hey, I'm going to go get the gargoyle, keep yourselves alive. I probably should have tried to get people topped off a little bit more. You can see they're all pretty low, but so was the pride, so I figured they'd kill it fast enough. So now here's the other gargoyle. I'm going to pull it with Crackling Jade Lightning, I presume, or actually probably Provoke. Provoke, if you're a monk, is really nice because it speeds them up so they get to you even faster. But note that it doesn't, blessings from Blizzard, it doesn't social any of these things. So as long as you, as your character, don't pull these mobs by getting too close, you don't have to worry about the Stoneborn coming in like too late and socialing it as it comes through. That won't happen. So I'm going to overrun and run even further than the group to make sure that it gets to the Warlock, who's our Venthyr, so that he can mind control it. The important thing to know for the person who's getting the gargoyle, the Venthyr here is mind controlling the gargoyle, and the tank who's doing the pull, is of course we all know that once you pull, this circle appears. And you need to be in this circle pretty darn quick after the boss gets pulled, otherwise you're going to get feared and it's very bad. So tanks understand that if you pull when they literally would not be able to get in time, that's your fault. Keep that in mind. Look at what's going on with your group and their placement. And consider if they're like, oh man, they're a little bit further away than I realized, pull the boss to them instead of just fighting it where you normally would. Help them get into the circle. So we quickly get into the circle and the fight starts. So I've already talked about the circle. If you end up outside of this circle at any point, you will get feared, and the fear will stay there until you're cleansed. But if you're outside, it can just refresh itself, or until this circle is until they bring the boss back to you. They have to literally drag the boss to the feared person, and you can then get cleansed, and you won't get re-feared. So it's a very big mess if you get feared, so just don't get out of the circle. The other thing he'll do is Crumbling Slam, which he's about to do. He Crumbling Slams the tank, so that's going to be on his tank target. and it leaves glass shards behind that will do damage. And he does basically this. Oh, I don't know if you saw that the hunter just got a little magic debuff. Let's go back a little bit. Play back. I don't know if jump backwards is going to go back by much. Anyways, well, we won't risk it. But you can see she's right here on the edge of the circle, and she actually got feared because when the tank moved for the crumbling slam, he moved away from her, causing her on the very edge to get feared. So that's the thing that ranged really need to understand, is while it's understandable why you want to be on the edge, which I'll talk about here in a moment for those uninitiated, but for the ranged who are very much on the edge, you need to be ready to move with your tank and not have any delay in your movement. I personally just would not risk it for being that close to the edge. The reason people like to be on the edge is his next mechanic. There it is, Heave Debris. So he's going to target someone at ranged, and basically he's going to do the same thing he did to the tank with Crumbling Slam. He throws some rocks at them, it leaves behind glass shards that do damage. So the idea that people have kind of come to, like, the intuitive idea that people have is that if we're all right on the outside as ranged and the melee are all right and the tank is right on the inside, then that should leave an open area in the middle of the donut for running around in, which in theory, yes. However, is that worth maybe getting feared by the circle overlap? No, I don't think so, especially because remember how much stuff we've cleared. We have a lot of space to play with this boss, so we really don't need to worry that much about our placement here. So range, as far as I'm concerned, just be in the mid-range. Keep yourself from accidentally getting feared if the tank moves unexpectedly. We did hero on this boss. That's relatively uncommon, not unheard of. However, the next boss is typically more of a check than this one. And so I've often seen people save hero for the next boss. But I use it here sometimes myself, usually because I forgot that I try not to. But it's a perfectly fine use for it. So we've basically gone over all of the mechanics except for the lines. Refracted Sunlight, it's coming soon to a theater near you. Right. Here it comes. So refracted sunlight, you can see, so he's going to put out these red lines in cardinal directions, and they're going to begin rotating, and you just need to not be hit by the lines. You have a moment, so you can see they started out kind of bright red, and then they turned dark red. While they were in bright red, they wouldn't hurt you, so that's giving you enough time to position yourself quickly to not take damage. And then they're going to rotate, and the tricksy thing here is that they can, at times, change the direction that they rotate. So you want to be in the middle of a pie slice, not on the edge of a pie slice, because if you're on the edge of a pie slice and they change direction, you could be in the slice of the pie. Also, you can see here, if I were over here, that would be a really unfortunate place to be because of all those glass shards, right? So that's why people like to have that middle of the donut that I mentioned, because no matter how it rotates, there's always clean space. But personally, I haven't had too many issues with just being in the mid. Even when there's a lot of glass shards, there's usually someplace that you can move. Okay, so we did it. Hooray. So now we're going to pull a little bit more trash. We want to spawn the 80% pride at the next boss, so we're going to pull more of this, which is the same stuff we've already fought. It's a relatively small pull, but nice and simple, I suppose. I feel like maybe something got accidentally, if I recall correctly, something got accidentally pulled that wasn't supposed to, so the tank's trying to adjust on the fly, and that's why we're doing some weird pulls. And also, he just generally does some weird pulls. So you're going to see this one. Oh, this, I remember what screws up here. This is something, you will very rarely fight this mob that we're about to, which one's he going to pull first? Okay, this you'll pretty much always fight. These ankle biters are very easy, very simple percent. So they don't really do anything. They just jump around. And they don't even do on-death affixes, so no spitefuls, no burstings, things like that. So the Eviscerator will jump at people and do damage to them. I don't remember if it does anything else, certainly nothing else I've really paid much attention to. The Reaver, however, will cast something called Turn to Stone, which absolutely must be interrupted. If it goes off, then anyone nearby is going to get stunned, and any mob nearby is going to take less damage. So there's that Turn to Stone, it got interrupted. So that is prime important things to interrupt, is Turn to Stone from these Reavers. They also have a frontal cone. So Melee, pay attention to where your tank is pointing it, and don't be in the frontal cone. Note that there is a knockback mechanic on these, so the tank might be adjusting their movement, so always be ready to adjust as well. Let's see here. I'm waiting to see if we actually get a magic debuff. Yep, so there it is. Okay, so the tank here has a magic debuff. Apparently, if this magic debuff gets to 10 stacks, I think it kills them instantly. I don't think I've ever seen it get above 3 stacks, and I never cleanse it, and it doesn't do that much damage, even on like fortified weak, so it's basically a non-issue at this point. So this is the weirdo pull that I was mentioning. This is very rarely pulled, and it's certainly not pulled in the way that this tank intended to. What this tank likes to do is they actually kill this Stoneborn for percent. I don't recommend this. Don't use this route. That said, it is useful to show you that there is a Stoneborn up here. And I hear you ask, well, if all Stoneborns are valuable and you wouldn't pull this, then isn't that a wasted Stoneborn? It's not. Because you'll remember there were some dudes underneath the stairs here. Not underneath them, but at the base of the stairs here on the right. If you kill those, you can actually have someone, before you fight the previous boss that we already fought, just come up here and tag the Stoneborn, and the Stoneborn can actually come through the gate, and your Venthyr can mind control him for the front area without having to fight any of this trash. So that way you can actually get value out of the Stoneborn without having to fight anything to get to it, like you currently have to do. Okay, this was one of the ones where we actually did remember to not kill the stone, or to not mind control the Stoneborn, which is okay, so the Stoneborn, if it doesn't get mind controlled, if for some reason you have one that you're not mind controlling, it does the frontal stone breath, which hurts. Don't stand in it. Hooray, we killed it. So much trash on this fight. Generally speaking, you will have, I moved to go close weak auras. Generally speaking, you will kill the ankle biters. You'll kill those 2 things by the statue, and depending on how much more stuff you need, you should need around 2% more when you move through. Shroud from a rogue is incredibly common, and also I would highly recommend always having invisibility potions just in general, but especially in HOA. Sometimes people won't ask you if you have one, they will just presume that you do, so make sure that you have one just in case your group intends to invis skip this courtyard. So these powerful swipes from these big gargoyles, they're actually outrangeable by the tank. So tanks, as soon as it starts casting, just backpedal. You don't need to give them your back. You don't need to run like crazy. Just backpedal. And at the speed that you backpedal, you will be out of range by the time the powerful swipe goes off. And then you can just walk back in so you don't have to make it too wonky on your poor melee. And you also don't have to deal with the knockback inherent in it. So also this is another place that you would kill your spitefuls, because you want to make sure that people can invis or shroud or just mount here. So then you'll usually, this is pretty normal, you'll either pull as you run through, or you'll get through and then back pull a slasher. This is the same as the one we just fight. It has the powerful swipe that's going to theoretically knock back the tank if he doesn't outrange it. There we go, he got that one outranged. Then we're going to do the prideful. Sorry, I'm skipping ahead a few because these are just, the HOA is just kind of the same mobs over and over again. So not a whole lot has changed. Okay, hooray, we barely survived the prideful. So this boss, this is probably the hardest boss in here as far as I'm concerned, Echelon. As soon as the tank hits the door, make sure the tank's the one who hits the door, please. Pardon me, had to mute there and cough. So the tank will hit the door, the big gargoyle Echelon will jump out, and then the fight begins. And let's see what that looks like. So the first thing that's going to happen is Blood Torrent, which is going to pick someone and put some blood under their feet. It is ideal to not have this in melee. However, it's not a big deal if it does end up in melee, because melee can just adjust and move away. Stone Call is going to summon little stone fiends from each of these gates, both in front and behind, so 6 total stone fiends. They will come towards melee, but they won't necessarily come into melee because, as you can see from this villainous bolt going off, they are casters. This is a great place for Prot Paladin's Divine Toll, Moonkin, Solar Beams, Chains of Sigil of Chains from Demon Hunters, death grips and mass grips from DKs, vortexes from druids, like anything to help things get grouped up and killed quickly. Now, when they die, as you'll see from this damage going out, it does do a burst of damage to the group. So healers be ready, especially on Tyrannical. That amount of damage, if it goes out all at the same time, can actually just kill people on Tyrannical, like high keys. But on a 15, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. After the Stone Fiends come out, you want to kill them quickly because then this is going to happen. Curse of Stone and Stone Call. So, or Stone Shattering Leap, I should say. I need to take a drink. Just one moment. It's almost like talking for 40 minutes straight is difficult. So, okay, where was I? Curse of Stone. So this is a curse. So this is the reason that you always absolutely on Tyrannical want to bring a decurse. So bring a mage, bring a boonkin. I know they're so not meta now, so hard to find. But you know, shaman, mage, moonkin, or any sort of druid. You want to have at least one decurse, because basically what Echelon's going to do is he's going to pick someone and Stone Shattering Leap them. So he's Stone Shattering Leaping Therazin right now. And Therazin's job is to bring that circle that's appeared around him onto all of these little tiny gargoyles that we just killed, which should be grouped up in melee. However, this is made difficult by the fact that we all have this curse that is snaring and then eventually stunning everyone. So the reason that you want to decurse is because that the slow and eventual stun is a curse. So if he can get decursed, he can move with impunity, so no snare, he won't get stunned, which not only has the benefit of making sure he'll be able to get into the area with the little gargoyles, but also, depending on the class and and if the player has prepared for it, you can actually get out of the damage that he's about to take by preparing for it. Then once we see it, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So you can see he got to where he needed to be. Everyone else has moved out, and we're stunned now. Now, Paladins, you can also cleanse your curse with the Kyrian Vial. Keep that in mind. Why I say Paladins? Like, to me, since all of my Kyrians are Paladins and all of my Paladins are Kyrian, like, it's synonymous, but I meant to say Kyrians. So, the Stone Shattering Leap is about to go off, and it's always going to target the person who got the circle. Like, that's what the circle is they're the target for Stone Shattering Leap. He's going to jump, and his jump will do a lot of damage, killing all of the little gargoyles that we killed, but also you'll see it did a huge chunk of damage to Therazin and put a huge dot on him that I have to like now pop a cooldown just to get him through. That's what I'm talking about the thing that can be avoided. If you have Soul Shape, Wild Charge, Blink, Intervene, anything that can get you quickly out of, that can move you quickly, is going to be able to allow you to avoid that damage. Basically, as soon as you see him animate that he's jumped, you can hit whatever button you're going to use to avoid it, and you'll avoid that damage, which is a huge deal for your healer, especially on Tyrannical. Please avoid that damage. On that same note, any other player who was in that circle during that jump would also take that damage and dot. So you need to make sure that no other players are in that circle. And that's a lot easier when you have someone who you know is going to handle the decurse, because basically when those curses go out, everyone who didn't get picked scatters and gets out of melee, so that melee is clear, so that the person who did get picked can just move right in and get in position properly. So we'll see another one of those, so we'll see how it plays out. I think I get picked. So you can see I've set my Transcendence here. I think I do get picked, so I'll just tell you what I've planned here. I've got a little Transcendence set up with my little ghost gnome there. And then so another Blood Torrent, another Curse of Stone. So we've all been cursed here. And then, indeed, I did get picked. So Izzy, our mage, is going to decurse. And now I am not concerned about getting gargoyles, because you'll remember we haven't had another round of gargoyles. If you do well on the first set, you don't need to worry about the second leap, because it's basically there's 2 leaps per set of one gargoyles. However, it is important to take stock of if you missed any gargoyles from the first leap, because the second one can help you make up for that. But we did a good job. So my goal is just to get out so that no one else no one else is in my circle, so that I don't hit them. So I've gotten out, and he's about to jump at me. And as soon as he begins to animate the jump, I'm going to hit Transcendence so that he jumps to where I was Yep, there we go. And I didn't take the damage. So that's how you try to like teleport out, is wait until he begins the jump and just immediately teleport, soul shape, blink, wild charge, intervene, etc., etc. I've heard that even like a nice fast, what's it called, like Ghost Wolf Shaman and stuff can do fine. So Izzy's got the jump. Sorry, I don't have the best visual on it, but he's okay. So he got in range to kill all the little gargoyles. He didn't hit anyone with the debuff. The reason I keep opening up my weak aura is because someone needed my spiteful weak aura, and so I finally am having the opportunity to open it. So this is the other really difficult pull in this dungeon, as far as I'm concerned. You can't see it because we've CC'd some stuff inside for safety's sake, but there are 2 Hound Masters, one's a bee and one's in a frost trap, and 3 Gargants in this pull. So that can be 2 Loyal Beast casts to watch out for, and 3 Gargants stacking bleeds. So the bleeds stack up really fast, and they can easily get not only enraged, but double enraged. It does stack. They can get it from both Huntsmen. So as you can see, what we did was we just CC'd both of the Huntsmen and killed the Gargants separately. I think that that's probably a little bit more cautious than we need to be, but I don't blame people for wanting to be cautious on fortified HOA inside the building pull. Okay, so now that the Gargants are not dealt with, we're going to go in and deal with these dudes. It's just two Huntsmen without their gargoyles. Not too difficult. Just make sure you stay out of their frontal cones. If you do end up fighting these with the Gargants, obviously this comes down to making sure Loyal Beast gets stunned, and helping your tank kite with things like rings and snares and AoE stuns as necessary if they need help dropping stacks of the bleed or avoiding enraged Gargants. The next pull is going to be virtually always going to be brought into this room. So you'll see most people just kind of loiter after this pull dies, and yeah, you can see the tank has brought it in. So we've got 2 dark blades. It's highly likely as soon as they come around this circle or around this corner, they're going to be deadly thrusting and doing like this this sort of red swirly thing to get out of. So just kind of stay back from this doorway in general is my rule of thumb. Because also this tank has grabbed one of the gargoyles, which is a good idea. There's 2 gargoyles in this room. He's grabbed one of them so that our Venthyr can take it. So that gargoyle was also frontal coning as it came around the doorway there. So just keep an eye on what's going on and don't be standing there in all of that frontal cone crap that all is happening at once. So we've got multiple deadly thrusts happening and a siphon life going off, etc., etc. Look at how much I got chunked by that, by some of those things going off all at once. So that's why you really want to keep an eye on what's going on in this pull. It can get deadly pretty quick, and it's in a pretty small area. Once the gargoyle gets mind controlled, it goes pretty well though. So we had the 1 gargoyle for there. We're going to get the other one for the trash. I'm sorry, for the boss, I meant to say. It is common, especially on tyrannical weeks, to not have that gargoyle in the pull we just did, and to actually take both Stoneborn into the boss. 1 Venthyr can mind control both Stoneborn, but they have to like jam the button until they get both of them. Like you can't like wait. You have to, as soon as they're in range, just start jamming the button. So this fight's relatively easy. You can see 4 jars around the room. So Elise will cast basically 2 things, Volley of Power or some sort of bolt. Volley of Power is the most important thing to interrupt, because that's going to do damage to like 3 people, I think. Definitely multiple people. So Volley of Power is a priority interrupt. Typically 2 people together can interrupt it, like they can just alternate. And I'll talk about this thing that's happening in just a moment. Anima Fountain is circles that just are going to appear under people's feet and kind of around the room at random. Just get out of them. Not a big deal. Volley of Power. Interrupt that. I'm trying to remember what the other thing is called. Well, Bolt of Power. Is that what I just saw? Volley of Power. Interrupt. Anima Fountain. We just saw. No, come on. Show us a bolt. Bolt of Power. So if you can interrupt these bolts of power, go for it, but they're just like single target bolts. It's not a big deal if they go off even on Tyrannical week. If you're going to have the interrupts for the volley anyways, feel free to fill in on the bolts, but it is not worth interrupting the bolts if it means you're going to miss a volley. You know what I mean? Volley priority. The other thing that's been happening that I haven't quite talked about yet is this right here. Every once in a while, she will summon a ghostly parishioner, and that will fixate on someone. For as long as that parishioner is fixated on that person, everyone is taking AoE damage. And the way to get rid of it is to drag it to one of these jars, and it will get caught in the jar. So there we go. So the person went and stood behind the jar, so it got caught in the jar and it's gone. On Tyrannical, it is highly likely you will use more than 4 jars. If that happens, then once the 4th jar is used, she will summon another jar, but you need to keep an eye on where that is because it could be in any of the positions and you might need to move quickly to it. So keep an eye on where the other jars are when they pop up on Tyrannical after the 4th jar. Ta-da! Okay. This room in particular can be very dangerous, especially on fortified weeks, and especially on things like explosive. Ooh, pretty rough on explosive. Essentially, you've got these 4 pews of souls, and the souls will turn into little amalgamations, which will fixate on people and go and attack them, and once they die, and they will eventually leave little puddles on the ground, which do damage if you stand in them. So there we go. That manifestation of envy just exploded and left this puddle on the ground that we shouldn't stand in. Meanwhile, you can see one's fixated on our mage, one's fixated on our warlock, one's fixated on me, one's fixated on the monk, or sorry, not the monk, they're all green to me, the hunter. Things of that nature. Thankfully, there's no spitefuls in here or on-death affixes, but they still are their own formidable opponent. And the other thing that's happening in this room that you haven't been able to see on my screen very well is the named dude. So there is a named mini-boss in here whose name is Mr. escaping me right now. And essentially what's happening in this room is as you DPS him down, he will eventually like commune or like cast like communion or something of that nature. And what's going to happen is he will suck the souls out of all of the mob, dark communion there, suck the souls out of all the mobs around here and heal himself back up. So eventually, theoretically, if you just DPS'd him long enough, he would eventually just die. However, it's easiest to just kill all the mobs so that he doesn't have any souls to suck, and then kill him from there. It's nice to pull him here because it's usually easier and safer to move him than move the pride that's about to come. So most people will move him up here towards the door. Also, it means you don't have to deal with all these little pews and stuff, which you have to jump over, and us poor baby little gnomes who get stuck on the pews sometimes. If he casts Dark Communion and there's nothing to commune with, he doesn't heal. Helping the poor melee with that shade. And we continue on with the prideful. Nearly done, guys. You can see how I really don't like hitting my heal buttons on my monk, do I? Haven't even touched that bone dust brew. It's because I know that I want it in the next fight. So, Chamberlain, he does a few things. So first he's going to pick a statue for telekinetic toss. And he's going to pick a statue and a person. Oh, I forgot he's going to do Stigma of Pride. He does that on the tank. It's just a dot. Don't worry about it. Just heal through it. So telekinetic toss. So he picks one of his 4 statues and he picks a person. And you'll know who he picked based on the direction that the statue turns to face. So basically the statue turned to face this direction. So the statue is about to shoot across the room towards our warlock. And if it hits you, it does a lot of damage. So the warlock just needed to move out to the side, which he did. Now, if he throws a statue in a direction that it causes it to hit another statue, it will cause the statues to bounce in strange directions and do a lot of damage. So, like, try to avoid that. Then we've got Telekinetic Onslaught. So he'll do this twice in the fight. And so what he's doing now is he's going to suck all of these statues into himself, so move out so that you don't get hit by the statues when they come in, and then he's going to shoot all of them back out in the cardinal directions they're currently placed in. So you look for a gap in the statues and then move into it so that you're safely in between the gap. And then immediately after he shoots those out, he's going to cast Ritual of Woe, which is going to basically put a line between him and all of these statues. And if there isn't something blocking each of those lines, he will. It does a lot of AoE damage. So you typically, the most simple way to do this is to just have one person in each line. And so that's what we're going to do. There are a lot of cheese strats regarding like people soaking multiple lines, particularly people with bubbles and immunities. Very useful for high tyrannical keys. Not the biggest of deals. Like, it's a cool thing you can do, but especially on like a fortified 15, no worries on setting that kind of stuff up. That said, these lines themselves actually do quite a bit of damage as well. So as a healer, I need to make sure that I'm prepared to do some big heals. I save a cooldown on my druid for each one of these. So like one round will be tranking, and then the next one will be convoke the spirits or something like that. There's only ever going to be 2 in the fight, so you just have to have a plan for both of them as a healer. That said, like I said, this does a lot of damage, so keep that in mind to DPS and tanks. Use your defensives, use your Touch of Karma, use your Shield of Vengeance, use your Fortifying Brew, use your Divine Protection, don't use your Turtle, we still want you to do DPS, but anything that's going to help you stay alive without causing you to take a lot of, use your health stones, use your healing potions. Like, this is a really good time to help out your healer, and one of the best things you can do to help out your healer is to soak from within their efflorescence. And I say this as a druid main. If there is an efflorescence or a healing rain down, or a power word barrier, or an anti-magic zone, big deal. So that kind of stuff. There's really, if you could soak a little bit closer in, I'd just love that, y'all. That's all I'm saying here. So because we pushed him through so fast, he's immediately doing the same mechanic again. So we're going to do that one more time. I have not yet shown, so he also does a frontal cone that I think that the video is just going so fast versus, pardon me, the video is just going so fast you didn't see it. So he just turned the statue towards people. So Erupting Torment, that's obviously just get out of the swirly. And okay, so we timed it, we finished it. I want to show y'all the frontal cone bit. So there's the Stigma of Pride, Telekinetic Toss, should be right around now, Unleash Suffering. So you can see he's pointing towards the door. This is much larger than it appears and much longer than it appears. Like, give this a lot of respect. Don't just move a little bit, move a lot. So that's the frontal. The frontal hit is just look, if he does the Telekinetic Onslaught, look at where, sorry, not the Telekinetic Onslaught, the Unleashed Suffering, is that it? Either way, that thing I just explained, it's totally not midnight, you can tell, right? If he does that thing I just explained, get out from in front of him. If he does the swirl, don't stand in the swirl, don't stand in the statues, stand near him, forget healing, win, get mad loots, and I hope that helped y'all out. If you have any preference for what dungeons y'all would like to see next, feel free to leave them in the comments. These are the only ones I had footage for already, so now I'm kind of open for whatever y'all want me to run. Thanks so much, y'all.